Charlotte Williams stood quietly before her mirror that morning, smoothing the folds of the simple white dress she had chosen. It wasn't the grand gown one might expect for the bride of Elon Musk. Instead, it was knee-length soft cotton with a row of tiny pearl buttons down the back. It wasn't expensive, nor designed by anyone famous, but it felt like her. Authentic. True. Today, she was marrying one of the most recognizable men in the world. And yet, her wedding was unlike anything the public would imagine. No lavish ballroom, no endless guest list, no flashing cameras. Just 20 people who mattered most. Elon's children, her family, and a handful of trusted friends. Her sister Emily appeared in the doorway, eyes lingering on the dress. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. "Marrying Elon Musk will change everything. There will be cameras, headlines, people analyzing your every move." Charlotte turned from the mirror with a calm smile. "That's exactly why we're doing it this way," she replied. "No crowds, no spectacle. Just the people who love us. Elon understands I don't want fame. I just want happiness." Downstairs, laughter and footsteps echoed as the garden was prepared. A small local planter had arranged the flowers and chairs in a quiet circle beneath the afternoon sun. Elon had offered her the most expensive coordinators in California, but Charlotte had insisted on simplicity, because this wasn't about money or status or image. It was about love. Downstairs, the garden was being transformed into something simple yet beautiful. Rows of wooden chairs were arranged in a circle beneath the late afternoon sun. Wildflowers tied with ribbon decorated the edges, and the gentle sound of a fountain carried through the warm air. Elon Musk stood in the center, pacing nervously as his assistant made small adjustments to the flower arrangements. He had been married before, but this time felt entirely different. With Charlotte, there was no performance, no audience, just love. "Dad, you're making me nervous," said X, his 5-year-old son, sitting on a small bench in his tiny suit, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers he had picked himself. Elon paused, smiling at him. "You get nervous when something matters." Charlotte, who had just stepped into the garden, knelt beside X. "That's true," she said softly. "Nerves mean your heart is awake." X looked between them both. "Does that mean you really love each other?" Elon sat beside his son, placing an arm around him. "It means exactly that," he replied. "And today, we're promising to take care of each other no matter what happens." Charlotte reached for Elon's hand, their eyes meeting in a quiet moment of truth. The garden fell silent as the first guests began to arrive. By late afternoon, the garden had filled with quiet conversation as guests took their seats. The air was warm, the golden light of the setting sun casting a glow over the simple decorations Charlotte had chosen. Wooden chairs, tied with sprigs of lavender, surrounded the small circle where the vows would be spoken. Charlotte stepped into the garden, her dress catching the light. The murmurs among the guests fell silent as she walked across the grass. Her eyes fixed on Elon. He was waiting at the front, holding little X's hand, his expression a mix of nerves and tenderness. The officiant, a kind-faced minister who had known Charlotte's family for years, welcomed everyone. "Friends and family, we are gathered here today to witness the marriage of Charlotte and Elon. They have chosen simplicity and sincerity, surrounded only by the people who love them most." Charlotte felt her heart race as she reached Elon's side. His eyes glistened when they met hers, and in that moment, the world outside, the fame, the pressure, the noise seemed to disappear. This wasn't about Elon Musk, the entrepreneur. It was about Elon, the man who loved her. The minister's voice carried softly through the garden. "Charlotte and Elon have chosen to speak their own vows." Elon turned to face Charlotte, taking her hands. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a trembling sincerity. "Charlotte, 2 years ago I walked into your bookstore searching for silence, and I found you. You reminded me that life isn't just about rockets or inventions. It's about slowing down, about love, about choosing joy. You became my quiet place in a noisy world." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She replied with a steady but emotional voice. "Elon, you spend your life solving humanity's problems. But you solved my greatest one. You showed me what true love feels like. I promise to stand beside you in your dreams, to care for you in your worries, and to love not just the man the world sees, but the man you are when no one is watching." The guests sat in silence, moved by the raw honesty. And yet, none of them could have predicted what was about to happen next. The minister looked up, smiling gently. "Before we continue, does anyone here have something they wish to share with the bride and groom?" The garden went still, and then a small voice broke the silence. "I do," said X, stepping forward with his wildflower bouquet clutched tightly in his hands. All eyes turned as X, holding his small bouquet of wildflowers, stepped bravely between his father and Charlotte. The garden grew utterly silent, everyone expecting a sweet, childlike comment to lighten the moment. Instead, the boy's soft, clear voice carried something deeper. "Charlotte," he said, his brown eyes serious, "thank you for making my daddy smile again. Before you came, he was sad, but now he laughs when he reads me bedtime stories." A ripple of emotion passed through the guests. Charlotte knelt, tears filling her eyes, realizing the depth of what this child had seen. X continued, his grip tightening on the flowers. "Before you, Daddy always worked. He forgot dinner sometimes, but now he makes pancakes on Sundays. And he plays games with me instead of always looking at his phone." Elon's throat closed. Hearing his son speak so openly was overwhelming. And then came the moment that made every heart stop. "Can I call you Mama Charlotte?" X asked softly. "Because real mamas are the ones who tuck you in and kiss you goodnight. And you already do that for me." Gasps and quiet sobs filled the garden. Charlotte's voice shook as she whispered, "I would be honored." X's face lit up with joy as he threw his arms around them both. "I love you, Daddy, and I love you, Mama Charlotte. Now we're a real family." The garden erupted into quiet tears and smiles after X's words. Guests dabbed their eyes with handkerchiefs, some whispering that they had never witnessed such honesty at a wedding. Even the minister stood in silence, visibly moved. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "I believe young X has just given us the most beautiful definition of family I have ever heard. Family isn't about names or papers, it's about showing up for each other, choosing love every day." Charlotte squeezed Elon's hand, her heart overwhelmed. She glanced at the small bouquet of wildflowers she now held, its simple beauty symbolizing everything this moment meant. The minister lifted her hands gently. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Elon leaned in, kissing Charlotte as the crowd erupted in joyful applause. X clapped his small hands together, laughing through his own tears. "We're really a family now," he shouted, his voice carrying across the garden. The laughter and cheers that followed blended with the sound of birds in the evening air. For a moment everything felt timeless. As the reception began, the garden transformed into a place of warmth and laughter. Long wooden tables decorated with candles, bowls of homemade food, and simple vases of wildflowers lined the lawn. The smell of freshly baked bread and roasted vegetables drifted through the air. Charlotte's mother had worked side by side with Elon's staff to prepare everything, ensuring that the celebration stayed true to Charlotte's vision of simplicity. There was no band, no flashing lights, just a playlist of soft music and the sound of people enjoying each other's company. Guests mingled freely, plates in hand, talking as though they were part of one large family. Elon's older children sat with Charlotte's nephews and nieces, laughing together over shared stories and silly games. The barriers that had once seemed so daunting, different families, different worlds, were fading into nothing. Charlotte's father, a retired teacher, found himself in deep conversation with Elon. "I'll be honest," he admitted, his voice thoughtful. "When Charlotte first told me about you, I was worried. Not because of who you are, but because I thought your world might be too complicated for her. She's always been drawn to peace and quiet. I feared that might get lost." Elon leaned forward, his expression sincere. "I was worried about the same thing, but she's shown me that success means nothing if you can't sit quietly with someone you love. She's taught me how to slow down, how to live life instead of just building it." Charlotte's father smiled faintly, his eyes softening. "She's always had that gift. Even when she was a child, she could find calm in the middle of chaos. She reminded us what mattered most, even when her mother and I lost sight of it." Nearby, X was making his own rounds, moving from table to table like the host of the evening. With his tiny suit and endless energy, he carried the same charm that had silenced the garden earlier. When he reached Charlotte's father, he spoke with his characteristic innocence. "Are you Charlotte's daddy?" "I am," her father replied with a smile. "Then that means you're my grandpa now," X announced confidently. "My other grandpa lives far away, so I'm glad I have a new one who lives close." As the reception began, the garden transformed into a place of warmth and laughter. Long wooden tables decorated with candles, bowls of homemade food, and simple vases of wildflowers lined the lawn. The smell of freshly baked bread and roasted vegetables drifted through the air. Charlotte's mother had worked side by side with Elon's staff to prepare everything, ensuring that the celebration stayed true to Charlotte's vision of simplicity. There was no band, no flashing lights, just a playlist of soft music and the sound of people enjoying each other's company. Guests mingled freely, plates in hand, talking as though they were part of one large family. Elon's older children sat with Charlotte's nephews and nieces, laughing together over shared stories and silly games. The barriers that had once seemed so daunting, different families, different worlds, were fading into nothing. Charlotte's father, a retired teacher, found himself in deep conversation with Elon. "I'll be honest," he admitted, his voice thoughtful. "When Charlotte first told me about you, I was worried. Not because of who you are, but because I thought your world might be too complicated for her. She's always been drawn to peace and quiet. I feared that might get lost." Elon leaned forward, his expression sincere. "I was worried about the same thing, but she's shown me that success means nothing if you can't sit quietly with someone you love. She's taught me how to slow down, how to live life instead of just building it." Charlotte's father smiled faintly, his eyes softening. She's always had that gift. Even when she was a child, she could find calm in the middle of chaos. She reminded us what mattered most, even when her mother and I lost sight of it. Nearby, X was making his own rounds, moving from table to table like the host of the evening. With his tiny suit and endless energy, he carried the same charm that had silenced the garden earlier. When he reached Charlotte's father, he spoke with his characteristic innocence. "Are you Charlotte's daddy?" "I am," her father replied with a smile. "Then that means you're my grandpa now," X announced confidently. "My other grandpa lives far away, so I'm glad I have a new one who lives close." Charlotte's father froze for a second, his eyes watering. He had 3 grandchildren from his other daughter, but they lived across the country. He rarely got to see them. The thought of X calling him Grandpa filled him with unexpected joy. He bent down and whispered warmly, "I would be honored, little one. Do you know what grandfathers do? We tell stories your parents won't, and we always carry candy in our pockets." X's eyes grew wide. "Do you have candy right now?" With a grin, Charlotte's father reached into his jacket and pulled out a small bag of peppermints. X giggled and ran off, showing his treasure to the other children. Charlotte stood at a distance, her heart swelling at the sight. Her family, Elon's family, their friends, everyone was laughing, connecting, sharing stories. It was as though love itself had spread across the tables, multiplying instead of dividing. Sarah, Charlotte's best friend, came to her side. "Do you see what's happening?" she asked softly. "This isn't just a wedding. It's the beginning of something bigger. Love doesn't divide families, it makes them grow." Charlotte nodded, blinking back tears. X had been right earlier. They hadn't just become a family during the vows. They had already been one. Tonight was only the proof. As twilight settled over the garden, the glow of string lights illuminated the tables. The reception had turned into something magical. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the sound of children running barefoot across the grass. The simplicity of the evening made it more beautiful than any grand ballroom could have. Charlotte sat with Elon's older children, listening as they shared memories of their father. "He's different now," one of them admitted. "Before he was always distracted, always working. But when you're around, he listens. He really listens." Charlotte reached for their hands. "I want you to know I'm not here to replace anyone. I only want to add love to what you already have. My door will always be open if you need me." Across the garden, X was darting between tables, introducing himself proudly. "This is my Mama Charlotte," he told guests, tugging her forward by the hand whenever he found someone new. "She makes pancakes and tells bedtime stories. She makes our house a garden." The words touched Charlotte deeply, and as she glanced around, she saw how true they were. Her quiet, bookish relatives were laughing with Elon's friends. Children from both families were building forts out of spare chairs and blankets. The garden was alive with unity. Sarah, Charlotte's best friend, leaned close. "Look at this," she whispered. "It's not just a wedding, it's the planting of a new family tree, and every branch is already growing." Charlotte wiped a tear, overwhelmed by gratitude. X had been right. Tonight wasn't about becoming a family. They already were one. This was just their way of telling the world. Later in the evening, when most of the children had grown sleepy and the playlist had faded into softer melodies, the garden began to quiet. The glow of the string lights shimmered against the darkening sky, casting a golden hue over the last few tables where guests lingered with cups of tea and wine. Charlotte, Elon, and X stood near the garden gate, thanking each guest as they departed. There were hugs, handshakes, and whispered blessings. Charlotte's mother wrapped her arms tightly around her daughter. "This was perfect," she murmured, her eyes glistening. "Simple, sincere, and beautiful. Exactly the way you always imagined." Elon's friends, men who were more accustomed to high-tech launches and boardroom battles, left shaking their heads in quiet amazement. "I'll tell you this," one of them said, smiling. "I've been to more weddings than I can count, but none will ever stay with me like this one. That boy of yours, he turned the vows into something unforgettable." Elon bent down, ruffling X's hair affectionately. "He definitely stole the show," he admitted, "but in the best way possible." At last, when the final car had disappeared down the driveway and the catering staff had packed away the last of the dishes, silence fell. The three of them, bride, groom, and child, sat together on the front steps of the house. Behind them, the garden still glowed faintly with the dying light of lanterns and string bulbs, like stars that refused to fade. They were exhausted but wrapped in a deep contentment. Charlotte leaned her head against Elon's shoulder. "Did we really get married today?" she asked, her voice half in wonder, half in disbelief. Elon chuckled softly, squeezing her hand. "We did. And thanks to X, everyone knows we didn't just become husband and wife. We became a family." X, sitting between them, fought to keep his eyes open. He tugged gently on Charlotte's dress. "Mama Charlotte, since it's your very first night being my mama, will you read me a bedtime story? Just one before I fall asleep." Charlotte's heart nearly broke from the sweetness of it. "I would love to," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. They rose slowly to go inside, but before stepping through the door, X turned and looked back at the garden where the ceremony had unfolded. His small voice was quiet, almost reflective. "You know," he said, "flowers grow better when they're planted together instead of all by themselves. Maybe families are like gardens, too." Charlotte and Elon froze, exchanging a stunned look over the boy's head. How could a 5-year-old see so clearly into the heart of things? Elon knelt down beside him, brushing a hand through his son's hair. "You're absolutely right," he said softly. Charlotte's voice trembled as she added, "And sometimes new flowers are planted in the garden, and they make the whole thing more beautiful." X smiled sleepily, satisfied that his thought had been heard. "That's what happened to us. You were the new flower, Mama Charlotte, and now our garden is perfect." The three of them went inside together, hand in hand, carrying with them not just the memory of a wedding, but the beginning of something much greater. Later that night, after X had been tucked into bed with his favorite story, Charlotte and Elon finally had a quiet moment alone. They sat together on the deck overlooking the garden, now empty but still glowing faintly with the last of the lights. The night air was cool, and the silence carried with it the weight of everything that had happened. "Thank you," Elon said suddenly. Charlotte turned, surprised. "For what?" "For seeing me," he replied. "Not the work, not the fame, just me, and for loving my children as if they were your own. You've given me more than I ever thought I'd have." Charlotte reached for his hand. "And thank you for letting me into your world, for trusting me to be part of your family, for showing me that love doesn't need to be complicated to be real." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the faint hum of crickets. On the nightstand inside, Charlotte had placed X's wildflower bouquet in a small glass of water. To anyone else, it was just a messy bunch of stems, but to her, it was the most precious gift she had ever received, a symbol of unconditional love, pure and unfiltered. "Elon," Charlotte whispered at last, "do you realize what X gave us today?" He nodded slowly. "The greatest wedding gift anyone could give, the reminder that love is simple. That family isn't something you inherit, it's something you create. Charlotte leaned against him, her eyes closing as she let the words settle. For the first time in years, Elon felt not only happy but complete. Somewhere inside, X stirred in his sleep, hugging his pillow close. In his dreams, the garden was blooming, just as he said it would, filled with flowers that grew stronger together than apart. And in that house, under the quiet blanket of night, a new family had truly begun.